I get asked everywhere I speak as to why I have done so well in life in spite of this scary illness. I believe it is due to the love and support of my family and due to me never going off my medication. I have been blessed to live in a time and a place where there is medication to treat my condition, if not entirely cure my illness. In the beginning, though, on the old medications, I was stuck in a sedated haze. When the first atypicals came on the market a few years after my diagnosis, I was able to partially awaken from the cloud of the illness. I remember the week that I was put on risperidol, I went to the library and tried looking up books that I hadn't been able to look up, my own books that were in the library collection, and I was able to find them immediately within 5 minutes, even though for years I hadn't been able to figure out how to find them in the stacks. And that was the first realization that something was going on with the risperidol. 9 years ago, I was placed on a new type of injectable sustained release drug during a research trial. It allowed me to return to almost a normal frame of mind. I went from sleeping 14 hours a day to 7. That means I'm awake 40 hours more a week. If I live another 20 years, this will have given me an extra 1,700 days of real life. That's a gift of life I hope I can make good on.
Many people have harmed me in my life, and I remember them all. But the memories grow pale and faint in comparison with the people who've helped me. The fellow survivors, the fellow voice hearers, the comrades and collaborators. The mother who never gave up on me, who knew that one day I would come back to her and was willing to wait for me for as long as it took. The doctor who only worked with me for a brief time, but who reinforced his belief that recovery was not only possible, but inevitable. And during a devastating period of relapse, told my terrified family, "Don't give up hope. I believe that Eleanor can get through this. Sometimes, you know, it snows as late as May, but summer always comes eventually." 14 minutes is not enough time to fully credit those good and generous people who fought with me and for me and who waited to welcome me back from that agonized, lonely place. But together, they forged a blend of courage, creativity, integrity, and an unshakable belief that my shattered self could become healed and whole. I used to say that these people saved me, but what I now know is they did something even more important in that they empowered me to save myself.
I remember crossing the threshold. They wheeled me up in a wheelchair to the ward at the University of Alberta Hospital for Psychiatry, and I started screaming uncontrollably when I saw the sign and passed through the threshold, and they probably thought I was having a psychotic break. But actually, it was the one lucid moment I had, because I realized what this meant, because I knew what it meant. A lot of people don't realize the full implications, but I saw my mother since the age of 5 and what it did to our family life and what it did to her life to be sick with schizophrenia. So I thought, oh my God, it's going to happen to me. When I met my future wife, I was afraid to tell her at first that I was ill. When I finally broke down and did so, she said, "That's interesting, so what?" Sadly, not everyone can do that. When somebody is first diagnosed with schizophrenia, often their best support is their family. That doesn't mean you won't face stigma at the hands of your family or friends. My wife's family was so upset of her marrying me that her mother told everyone in her family to boycott it. She actually received wedding announcements back from her brother, returned to sender. She didn't receive a single wedding present from her family.
Even with all that, excellent treatment, wonderful family and friends, supportive work environment, I did not make my illness public until relatively late in life. And that's because the stigma against mental illness is so powerful that I didn't feel safe with people knowing. That said, I don't wish to be seen as regretting the life I could have had if I'd not been mentally ill, nor am I asking anyone for their pity. What I rather wish to say is that the humanity we all share is more important than the mental illness we may not. What those of us who suffer with mental illness want is what everybody wants. In the words of Sigmund Freud, to work and to love.
In 1969, when my mother was first diagnosed, my dad developed a cardiac event and a condition that he was told he had 5 years to live, and he lived until 2016. So he obeyed the doctors, which is where my story goes to, of my obedience of that profession, difficult as it may have been, and he survived. So, you know, the doctors sometimes can get it right.
On to one of the reasons why I believe that I've done so well is because I've adhered to the medication regime. But the reason I've adhered is because I had a reason. As an advocate and as a writer, I had a purpose to get up in the morning. A lot of people with schizophrenia and mental illness lose that hope, lose that meaning in their lives. You have to find some purpose for yourself. You have to find some meaning for yourself so that you stay on the meds, so that you keep on going, so that even though you're living in a rundown part of town or you're living in substandard housing, you still have a purpose, your life still has meaning and is a real blessing.
It was armed with this knowledge that ultimately I would gather together my shattered self, each fragment represented by a different voice, gradually withdraw from all my medication and return to psychiatry, only this time from the other side. 10 years after the voice first came, I finally graduated, this time with the highest degree in psychology the university had ever given, and 1 year later, the highest master's, which I always say isn't bad for a mad woman. I worked in mental health services, I spoke at conferences, I published book chapters and academic articles, and I argued, and continue to do so, the relevance of the following concept, that an important question in psychiatry shouldn't be what's wrong with you, but rather what's happened to you towards myself. And I remember the most moving and extraordinary moment when supporting another young woman who was terrorized by her voices and becoming fully aware for the very first time that I no longer felt that way myself, but was finally able to help someone else who was.
As a young woman, I was in a psychiatric hospital on 3 different occasions for lengthy periods. My doctors diagnosed me with chronic schizophrenia and gave me a prognosis of, quote, grave. That is, at best, I was expected to live in aborted care and work at menial jobs. Fortunately, I did not actually enact that grave prognosis. Instead, I'm a chaired professor of law, psychology, and psychiatry at the USC Gould School of Law. I have many close friends, and I have a beloved husband, Will, who's here with us today.
As I stand before you, I am reminded of the continuing importance of hope and resilience. Although little can be accomplished with hope alone, when accompanied with resilience, hope can guide one's ability to recover from a disability, to defy expectations and maintain a productive life after a mental diagnosis. As you venture forth into the world, never forget the power that lies within you to effect change. When I was diagnosed with schizophrenia, it would have been easy to succumb to despair, to retreat into the shadows and abandon my dreams. But instead, I chose to be resilient, hope for a better future, confront my illness head on, and become a voice amongst the many voices in my head for those of you who suffer in silence. As you enter this new chapter in your lives, I urge you to hold on to hope. Let it be your guiding light in times of darkness, your source of strength in moments of weakness. For it is a hope that will sustain you through the uncertainty that lies ahead, and we live in uncertain times, kid you not. It is hope that will embolden you to chase your dreams. And it is hope that will ultimately lead you to the fulfillment of your goals. In closing, I want to leave you with a quote from Mary Angelou. Hope and fear cannot occupy the same space. Invite one to stay. As you navigate the uncertainties of the future, may you always choose hope over fear, courage over complacency, resilience over resignation,